is formed.
ما مشکل ایجاد کرده تا کنون باید ثابت بکنن که
Well, joining us now to discuss some of the U.S. tariffs and, of course, Iran rejecting U.S.'s negotiations is Erol Morkoç. He joins us from California. Erol Morkoç there. You never told me about that, Morkoç name, but then good to have you join us this weekend. Now, do you agree that reciprocal taxes by the U.S. should exclude emerging countries like third world economies?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point and something that hasn't been touched on a lot. And I think that the answer is overarching yes. It should exclude emerging markets. Now, what is an emerging market starts to be the question. The United States and the UK, for example, gave aid last year to China and to India. I mean, these are very wealthy countries. Yes, there's a large population and whatnot, but the concept of an emerging market should be very well defined as a smaller country, a country that doesn't have large military capabilities, that already isn't doing large-scale tech investment and tech work. So I think that's the real answer to that. We want to make sure that if a country is going to get these favorable trade deals, which we've given to the entire world, we want it to make sure that it's a country that really needs it and is going to be hugely benefited from it rather than just taking advantage of the U.S. taxpayer, which we feel has happened in a lot of countries that are declared as emerging markets but are not. So I think that would be the way we're looking at that question.
Now, I would like for you to also make comments with regards Warren's comments about America falling into correction territory. He fears that the economy would have a fallout. What is your take on Warren Buffett's comments or interview?
You know, his comments match his behaviors. He's been building a multi-hundred-billion-dollar cash stockpile for the last 3 or 4 years. It's very publicly announced in Berkshire Hathaway, his holding company's data that they've given. So obviously, Warren Buffett has been planning for a correction for years. If you were not planning for a correction, you would not be so heavily into cash. And I think that that's because there's sort of a situation that needs to happen, and you need to have this trade rebalancing. You need to have reciprocal and equitable trade. And when that sort of when the U.S. as an indispensable sort of nation where everybody is just has the advantage against us changes, that moment of change is going to be, social functionalism. And inside of that, you will have a drawdown like we've seen. You will have uncertainty. And that's where somebody like Warren Buffett is poised to capitalize massively. But that doesn't mean that, okay, so we should just forever let trade go one way. We have a $36 trillion debt. We have a trade deficit with everybody in the world effectively. And just so the rich can keep their equity in their stocks, keep in mind only 1 out of 10 Americans actually owns a meaningful amount of stocks, that we're supposed to just allow this trade imbalance to go on forever. So I agree with Warren Buffett's general analysis. I think anybody with an economics degree would understand that if you change anything in a cycle, you're going to have turmoil. But I wouldn't say that all is lost. And obviously, Warren Buffett has seen this moment coming, and this is a huge opportunity for him and anybody else in his position. So it's not wrong in the short term, but I think obviously it's wrong in the long term. And Warren Buffett wouldn't be sitting there with a pile of cash to buy all this equity if he thought the long run was going to be a bad run too. So it's about making America strong again for future generations, not for this next 6 months or whatever, while we go through the trials and tribulations and the sort of bombastic Trump proclamations, carrot and stick. These kind of things are how Trump negotiates. But once the dust settles and once the American manufacturing sector or American worker is given, it doesn't even have to be a factory directly, but it has to be commitments and promises. And once we feel that we have this reciprocal situation, I think Mr. Buffett will be very happy that he's had all this cash and invested it probably very well during this economic downturn.
Now, quickly, April 2nd is Liberation Day for Americans, but for foreign businesses, it's more like a revenge day. That's according to comments out there. Also, April 2nd is expected to signal a shift of trade partners and allies. Do you think this will give China more edge in its push to dominate the world power?
I doubt it. We are China's largest trading partner, and China has a incredible population issue with population aging problem. On top of it, China can't feed its own population without the U.S. controlling the seas and importing food. So the idea that they're going to take an economic world situation and turn it to their advantage is pretty unlikely. I think that the idea that it's about revenge is a unfortunate way to frame it, because if you've been able to take advantage of somebody who's given you this ability to take advantage of them for X amount of years, and then one day they say, okay, now we're not going to give you the 25% off at the dinner anymore. People get addicted to discounts. And that's what's happened. The world has had a collective perpetual discount against the American market. Now the Americans are saying we want to make it 1-to-1, and they say it's revenge and this and that, but really it's not. It's equality. And equality is oppression to people who have always had the advantage. And so that's how they feel. But as far as China leverages this to their advantage, I can't see how they will. It's going to hurt them far more than it's going to hurt us. We're the biggest consumer, they're the biggest supplier. They're going to have to maintain their market share somehow, and they're going to have to fight off domestic competition or foreign countries, including Chinese companies, investing in the US to avoid these tariffs. So it'd be very surprising to me to see if China could leverage this in any way that isn't negative for them.
So let me give you an instance now, Erol. Canada is set to increase tariffs on the US, and Trump has warned that EU's collaboration with Canada shouldn't, move forward. How do you dictate how other nations do business? And secondly, I want you to answer that with regards some of the American business owners there. This would mean a big bunch on the shoulders of those who do business in the US as well.
Yeah, well, I guess you do influence the way the world does business through tariffs. So the same way that the Canadians have influenced how the Americans have done business, will certainly go the other way. I think it's important to understand that when you bring Canada into the situation, we only export maybe 1 to 2% of our GDP to Canada, and that's generous. Canada, 30% to us. Imagine there's a lemonade stand and we're the only customer, and now we're saying that we want to pay a fair price. Well, they can hum and haw and this and that, but they don't have anywhere else to sell it. So they're going to have to come to the negotiating table. These tariffs aren't meant to be there forever. They're meant to so that the reciprocal tariffs are taken off. So then there can be free trade, actual free trade between, I mean, that's what neighbors should do. That's what allies should do. If you're our ally, you shouldn't be tariffing our cars. That's telling us how we can do business. And then we're not tariffing your cars. And then we put a tariff on your car and you feel offended, then take the tariff off and everything's cool. So I think that's kind of a situation. Again, equality feels like oppression when you've had this advantage for so long. So a lot of these countries can hum and haw and make their statements. But if they try to get into a global trade war like Europe and Canada teaming up, I mean, it's not going to go well for them, and it's only going to collapse their markets more. They are the ones who export to us. They're the ones who all of their labor is in their manufacturing base. Our entire economy is service based. You can tariff what? Google, Facebook, okay, a bunch of rich guys, they'll figure it out. But if we're tariffing Daimler, Chrysler, and we're tariffing like actual manufacturing companies, I mean, these people have pensions. So if in a trade war, all of these countries will lose in a trade war. The writing is on the wall. The question is, how much internal pain do they want to feel? Because the American consumer, despite all of the news, is not going to feel very much of this. There isn't a lot that we're using here in America that isn't replaceable through some other trade venue. And Canada has the weakest leg to stand on out of all of them. At least Mexico has a vibrant and large trade with us. It's much larger than Canada, actually the largest trade agreement in the world right now. So I think Canada doesn't have a lot of ground to stand on. They're going through a lot of political turmoil. Their economy has gone flat since Justin Trudeau went in there. That's 10 years of no growth. Europe, same thing. 2008, 2010, we're even. Now we're double them. So, I mean, again, these are not congruous countries. They've been poorly managed, and they've been dependent on U.S. subsidies. And when the subsidies are cut, which is what these low tariffs we had or no tariffs were, effectively subsidizing their economy, are cut, then they're going to have to deal with the reality of that. And the reality of that is they need to come to the negotiating table and find detente with President Trump, who's looking out for the American worker and who is clearly America first. And if you can work with him there, I think you can find peace.
Okay, then let's move to Iran and the U.S. Iran rejecting U.S.'s negotiation. Is Iran's rejection of direct talks a slap on Trump or a show of Iran's mistrust for the U.S.?
It's a show of weakness. When somebody comes and says, "Hey, let's have a discussion," and you immediately say, "I'm not going to have negotiations," well, you're enriching uranium up to 60% so you can have nuclear weapons, and you declare, "I'm going to wipe Israel off the face of the map. America's the great Satan. You're not going to negotiate with us." Eventually, we're going to dispatch those B-2 bombers from Diego Garcia, and we're going to destroy every single Iranian military and nuclear facility in the country. So they have two choices. They can negotiate with us, or they can get blown out of the water, because there's not a chance, a snowball's chance, that these people will be allowed to get a nuclear bomb under the President Trump's presidency. And the quicker they figure that out, that negotiations and talking and trade are a much better way of doing things, the quicker they're going to not have to deal with the actual power of a real U.S. strike, which will come if they do not bring themselves to the table. This isn't about a forced negotiation. This is an absolute forced negotiation. If they do not want to negotiate, I think there will be war.
Now, let me bring your attention to this, which is very significant to this conversation we're having. Will the U.S. insist on direct talks, and what are the likely consequences if Iran refuses?
Yeah, we are going to insist on direct talks. We need to speak to the leadership, whoever the Iranians want to make. I don't think the supreme leader Ayatollah will maybe come and talk, but the president and elected officials, and it would be very detrimental to the entire world for them to not come and approach peace talks. And if they don't approach peace talks, and if you consider they're funneling their drones and their military equipment from Iran through Armenia into Russia to be used in Ukraine. Shahed drones from Iran are being used. So these guys are in the axis of evil. They're openly supporters of Vladimir Putin. They're working hand in hand, and eventually there will be serious military consequences. Already Israel has proven that they can kill anybody they want inside of the absolute supreme compound of the Iranian National Guard. So Iran is a fractured, weak country that can't project any power. You saw how pathetic it was. They were shooting hundreds of rockets and missiles at Israel, and they're all just being popped out of the air. It's like a joke. They're an army from a century gone by, and they're really being led by people who don't understand that this is a new world order. This is a world order that wants peace and wants trade. And if you don't want to have peace and trade, that's cool. But if you want to enrich bombs and you want to start a nuclear arms race in the Middle East, which that is what will happen, by the way. Saudi Arabia has already said, if Iran gets the bomb, we will get the bomb. So as soon as Iran officially has it, the whole Middle East becomes radioactive. And from a historical perspective, there isn't a lot of calm blood, calm minds in that area, and probably you'll have a nuclear proliferation that will be actually explosive. So it's going to be incumbent upon the Iranian people to encourage their leaders to sit down and talk to President Trump, who is the first American president who is going to actually want to sit down and talk to them. And if they don't do that, they might see all those nuclear facilities just blowing up out of the water one day, and there's not a lot they can do about it.
Now, I wish you can take this in just maybe 2 sentences. Do you see Iran twisting the U.S. towards lifting some sanctions on them for direct talks to hold? Plus, which Western or Middle East ally can wade into the Iran-U.S. negotiations feud?
Yes, I think they could get some concessions. I think that they could twist the arm a little bit and Trump would be willing to give a little bit. And as far as besides the obvious, I think you're going to have a strong involvement in Ankara from the Turkish. The Turkish are the second largest army in NATO. They are, a very strong ally of the United States, and they are one of the only Muslim majority countries that can actually project power, that has an air force, that has a ground force. So the Turkish, I think, will be somebody who maybe can play a mediator role in this conflict.
All right, then, good to have you, and thanks for making out time. Erol Morkoç is a Republican spokesman there. We'll take a short break. Rise America will be back. Stay with us.